Good morning. So our Time for All Ages today is something I would call a modern fable. I can't find the exact author of this writing, this story. It shows up in a lot of places online, and sometimes I see it listed as like a Brazilian folktale, a Mexican folktale. But in some of those versions, one of the characters is an investment banker. And so I haven't seen a lot of folk tales with investment bankers, so I'm thinking this is one of those modern tales that people like to pretend is an old folk tale. One day, a fisherman was lying on the beach. He was lying on the beach, on the sand. It was just around the start of sunset. So the sand was warm, but the breeze was starting to cool a little bit. Can you feel that? Can you imagine? Imagine that feeling, the sand on the backs of your arms and legs, still a little warm, the cool breeze. You can hear the sound of the waves as they hit the shore. Maybe you hear the sound of a bird. In front of you, you can see the colors of the sky begin to change in the sunset. Such a relaxing time. The fisherman was laying there just like that. He had his fishing line propped next to him with one line out into the surf. And he was just waiting. If a fish came, he would notice it start to wiggle and he would get to work. But in the meantime, he was enjoying where he was and what he was doing. Now, a businessman was coming down the beach, maybe an investment banker. I'm not sure what kind of businessman he was. But he was coming down the beach after a long and stressful day, and he was going for a walk to de-stress. In my mind, he was probably checking his Fitbit to get in his active minutes in his effort to de-stress. And he was walking down the beach, and he came upon the fisherman lying there with just one line out into the surf. And he thought to himself, look at this man who is so unproductive. Just laying here doing nothing. He has just one line. You can't even feed a family with that level of work, that level of effort towards fishing. What is this man doing? And the businessman walked up to the fisherman and he said, you should be working rather than lying on the beach. And the fisherman looked up at the businessman and said, and what would my reward be? Well, the businessman said, if you were working, if you had more lines out and were catching more fish, you could earn more money. And the fisherman said, and what would my reward be? And the businessman said, well, this was like basic business. He didn't understand why he had to explain this to this man. But he said, well, if you had more lines out and earn more money, you could buy more fishing equipment. You could buy more nets, and then you could catch more fish and earn more money. And the fisherman said, and what would my reward be? The businessman was getting very frustrated, and he said, well, if you had more nets, and you caught more fish, and you earned more money, you could buy a boat. And if you had a boat, you could go out into the deeper water, where there are more fish, and you could catch more fish, and you could earn more money. And the fisherman said, and what would my reward be? And the businessman said, if you had a boat and earned more money, you could then get more fish, you could buy a bigger boat, you could hire people to work on your boat, and they could do more of the work, and you would earn more money. And the fisherman said, and what would my reward be? And the businessman said, he was getting like red in the face. He was so angry at this point. He said, well, if you had a boat and you earned more money, you could buy a fleet of boats. You could have contracts with stores and restaurants. You could have an entire staff working for you. You could earn so much money that you could be laying on a beach just watching the sunset and doing nothing. And the fisherman looked up at him and said, what do you think I am doing right now? Thank you for listening to my story.